Hello everyone, welcome to your final video lesson of the week. Yes, we made it to Friday. Today we are going to be practicing our analytical writing. So can you please jot down the title, the date and the learning objective. Pause the video and do that now. Alright, that means if you're back, we're ready to complete our do now. You need to answer these 5 questions in full sentences based on what we read last lesson when we met the fairies. Pause the video and complete these 5 questions now, please. All right, let's make our purple pen corrections. Make sure that you make any corrections by writing down the answer if you got it wrong. So the fairy servants must keep Oberon and Titania separated because they are angry at each other for quite a few different reasons. The mischievous fairy is called Puck. Titania accuses Oberon of falling in love with Hippolyta. And Titania has an Indian attendant prince that Oberon wants for himself. And here are some of my adjectives. You might have put different ones down, but jot these ones down if you don't have them. Love and romantic relationships so far have been chaotic, confusing, difficult, challenging, and messy. Pause the video and make any corrections that you need to now, please. Okay, so like I said, today we are practicing our analytical writing. So to do that, we need a question. This is our question. Can you copy this into your exercise books, please? How does Shakespeare present romantic relationships? Pause the video and copy this down. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to write a paragraph for this question, and then you are going to write your own paragraph to this question, and I'll introduce that at the end, so don't worry for now. All you need to do is watch and listen to me write my own paragraph. It's very important. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. And if you don't listen and watch, you might make some little mistakes. So, last lesson we read this from Oberon, and I got you guys to write a quote from Oberon that summarises his feelings and attitude. I also got you to write a quote about Titania. So, for last lesson, I also wrote down a quote for Oberon and Titania, and I'm going to use my quote from Oberon today for my paragraph on romantic relationships. The quote that I have chosen is this one here, where Oberon questions how Titania can even question his loyalty when he knows that she loves Theseus and that she doesn't love him. That is the quote that my paragraph's going to be focused on today. So, the first step of my analytical paragraph is my point. Remember, this is the flowchart that we use for our point. We have to write where in the text our idea takes place. We mention the writer's name. We use one of these verbs or phrases here to show that the writer has created the text. And then we're going to write our own idea to answer the question. Okay, so I know my quote is from Oberon, so I'm going to use that to write my point. So I'm going to do step 1 first, right where in the text the idea takes place. Well, it's quite early on in the play, so I'm going to write at the beginning of the book. Hopefully you're all shouting at the screen and saying, "Madam, it's not a book." No, it's not a book, it's a play. At the beginning of the play, now I'm going to put my comma. That means that I have done step 1 of my point. Now I'm going to mention the writer's name. You can always find the writer's name in the question, and we're not studying Dickens anymore. We are doing Shakespeare. So I've mentioned the writer's name. And now I need to use one of these words to show that the writer has created the text. I'm going to write the word, I'm going to use portrays, which just means shows. Shakespeare portrays. That's step 3. And now, most importantly, I need to write an idea in my own words to answer the question. So the question is asking me to talk about romantic relationships. So portrays romantic relationships as, and then I need to think of an idea in my own words. Well, for the do now, we wrote down a few different adjectives to describe love. So I'm actually going to use one of those, and I'm going to use the word chaotic. And that's the end of my sentence. So I'm going to put my full stop down there. That is my point. Complete. My next step, have a think. You should have remembered that my next step is my quotation. And remember, in my quotation, I use this flowchart. I explain what is happening when the quote takes place. I mention who says the quote or who it's about, who's involved, and then I write the quote as part of my own sentence. Now, this is something that we struggled to do in our assessment, and we're going to do a lot of work on it to make sure it's perfect. So, I've already chosen my quote. It's the one from Oberon that I highlighted just at the beginning of the lesson. So, that quote takes place when what's happening when Oberon and Titania are arguing. So that's what I'm going to write. So when Oberon and Titania are arguing, and then I'm going to put a comma. That is my first step of my quote done. Then I need to mention who says it, who the quotation's about, what's happening. So I know Oberon says it, and he says it to Titania. So I'm going to write, when Oberon and Titania are arguing, Oberon asks Titania. No one else is involved, so that step is done. Now I need to write my quote as part of my sentence. So my quote was, Oberon asks Titania, how canst thou, and I'm copying it directly down so I don't make any spelling errors, how canst thou this for shame, knowing I know thy love for Theseus. And it's a question, there's a question mark at the end, and then I need to do my closed speech marks there. And that is my quotation as part of my sentence done. So my paragraph so far reads as this. At the beginning of the play, Shakespeare presents romantic relationships as chaotic. When Oberon and Titania are arguing, Oberon asks Titania, how canst thou this for shame, knowing I know thy love for Theseus? So that is my quote complete. Now, my third and final step of my paragraph, think in your head, what is it? And you should have remembered that it is my explanation. And my explanation uses a sentence starter that looks something like this. This shows that, and then I've used language from the question, are, and then because. So I need to explain how my quote supports my original idea. So I said originally that romantic relationships are chaotic, and now I need to explain that. So let's start off with that. This shows that romantic relationships are chaotic. That's the word I use at the start of my paragraph, so that's the word I'm going to use now. Now I need to explain why I think that's the case. Why do I think romantic relationships are chaotic? And I need to explain it based on my quote that I've chosen. So the quote from Titania the quote from Oberon questioning Titania about how faithful and unfaithful she's been shows that romantic relationships are chaotic because, I mean, he's accusing his partner of being unfaithful in quite like a heated row. So I'm going to write, because Oberon is being quite rude, accuses Titania of being unfaithful to him, and then a full stop at the end. And that is the final stage of my paragraph. So now my paragraph reads, at the beginning of the play, Shakespeare presents romantic relationships as chaotic. When Oberon and Titania are arguing, Oberon asks Titania, how canst thou this for shame, knowing I know thy love for Theseus? This shows that romantic relationships are chaotic because Oberon is rudely accusing Titania of being unfaithful to him. That is my paragraph complete. Now it's your turn. So you have this question written down. What you need to do now is follow the structure to write an answer to that question. Remember, you start with your quote. So I have chosen the quote that you are going to base your paragraph on. And this is the quote from when Lysander and Hermia were speaking about how challenging love was. And it says, the course of true love never did come true. That quote is actually not 100% correct. Hopefully you would have noticed that it should be, never did run smooth. I apologise. The course of true love never did run smooth. We looked at that quote in detail last week, and you actually made a mind map where you annotated loads of different answers off of it. So you can refer back to that to help you to write your paragraph on this quote today. Remember, the structure is your point, your quote. This is your quote. You need to make sure you write it as part of your sentence and include steps 1 and 2. And then the final step is your explanation, and you're going to use a sentence starter. This shows that romantic relationships are something because, and then you're going to explain your reasoning. Take your time. Remember to use the flowcharts to help you, and make sure that you look back at your mind map for this quote last week, and that will help you to write your point, your quote, and your explanation. Pause the video and write your own paragraph now, and then come back to the video, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you have written a point, your quote, and your explanation about romantic relationships. Now you're ready to submit your work. Pause the video now if you need a reminder of how I expect your work to be submitted. Send it over to my email, and I look forward to marking your excellent hard work. Have a lovely weekend, and I will see you next week.